Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear student and viewers, today we are going to be discuss the module 4 data analysis process, step 6 field for data correlations. As you know that the research process for the basic and applied research, step 6 scientific research design. Basically scientific research design is have a complete framework. As you know that the scientific research design we have divided in three parts: detail of the study, measurement, and data analysis. Nowadays we are working on data analysis, step 1 field for data, and today we are going to be discussing a point, the field for data point correlations, element of correlations. And before going to discussing the correlations, here you can see a data analysis process in framework. Field for data, we have already discussed the mean, standard deviation, and now today we are going to be discussing the correlations. As you know that the correlation is the degree of relationship between two variables and considered by the researcher. Measured through the correlation analysis, the measures of the correlation called the correlation of the coefficient. When we measure the correlation of two variables, that is called a correlation of the coefficient of the variable. The correlation is a statistical tool to help the researcher to analyze the degree of the relationship between two variables. Correlation analysis deals with the association between two and more variables. The types of correlations: simple correlation, multiple correlation, partial correlation, and total correlation. First we discuss the simple correlation. Under simple correlation problem, there are only two variables are studied, and when we are going to be checking the correlation of two variables, we have used a simple correlation. Simple correlation is working between two variables. And multiple correlation, under multiple correlations, when we are want to be calculate the correlation of more than three variables are studied, and we want to be calculate the correlation of more than three variables, two and three variables, we used a multiple correlation. Partial correlation, in this types of correlation, more than two and three variables we have taken in this type of correlation, but one variable is mostly is taken, we have the constant. For example, if the demand and supply and income is three variables, we take a income is the constant variable, and we check the correlations between the demand and supply. The last one is the total correlation, is based on all relevant variables, and which is normally not be feasible and not be used. The linear correlation is said to be the linear when the amount of change in one variable similar trend and bear a constant ratio of the amount of change in the other. The graph of the variable having a linear relationship is showing a straight line, that is called a linear correlation. You have also been seen a image of a graph of the linear correlations. Non-linear correlation, the correlation would be non-linear if the amount of change in one variable does not be changed, not be constant with the same variable and with the same amount of ratio of the change in the other variable. In this correlation, you have not be seen, you have not be find a graph with a straight line, you have seen a graph with a curved line, that is called a non-linear correlation. Different methods we have studying the correlation. Here we have also discussed the few methods of correlations: scatter diagram methods, graphic methods, called Pearson coefficient of correlation, method of least square, that also be used in for when we are using the studying the correlation of the variables. Here is the formula of the correlation formula. The correlations of, for example, here is the example of two variable x and y. The coefficient of x and coefficient of y, standard deviation of x variable and standard deviation of y variable, divided with the coefficient of x and coefficient of y. We can calculate the correlation of the variable x and y variable of y, meaning a relationship of between two variables. The correlation between the two random variables is the dimensions number is between 1 and -1. We have discussed in our next coming slide in the negative correlation and positive correlation and the zero correlation. There we can easily understand the dimension between 1, plus and minus. Interpretation of the correlation measures the strength of the linear relation between the two variables. Strength, not the slope. Linear misses the non-linearity completely. 2 shows only shadows of the multi-dimensions relationship. And now, after completion of the interpretation and the linear and non-linear correlation, we take a overview of the SPSS analysis. Here you have seen the SPSS analysis. How can we find out the correlation in the SPSS, and how can we check, how can we calculate the correlation in SPSS? Very easy to you find the correlation, and you have calculated the correlation according to your requirement. And secondly, the SPSS analysis also be provide the different types of correlation. You can be check partial and partial and simple correlations and multiple correlation. That is the choice of the researcher, which one they have required, and according to the need of the study. And SPSS analysis, you have here you have select the bivariate correlations, and basically you have choose your variables, and you have select the tab forward tab, and then you have taken the Pearson and Kendall and Spearman correlations formula. It's up to you and the requirement of you for finding the rational finding your the rational of the data according to your variables. Here is also be here is taking the two examples of age and systolic blood pressures example of the two variables, and you have seen but you have select your variables according to your need, and you have select the Pearson's, and you can be also be calculated Kendall, and also be you can calculate the correlation of Spearman according to your researcher need, and according to how much which types of your rational data you be calculated for the analysis. Here is some trends of positive relations and negative relation, but in first slide you have seen here a correlation of the +1 would be arise only if all of the points lined up perfectly and they are stretched in the same straight line. That is called a linear correlation, and also be a positive correlation. Here you can see the data is scattered, not be on the lines, and you have independent random variables have a correlation of 0. Here is basically this graph is represent the 0 correlation. Here you can see the correlation of the variables, but a negative correlation signal that the large value of the one variables are typically associated with the small values of other. Here you have seen a negative correlation between the two variables. Here example of a variable x and variable y. A correlation studies why we do for a correlations analysis show the amount of a relationship present basically, and can be used to make the prediction about the variable under study. That is the most important need for the researchers. Can be used in many places, including natural setting and a library, where we can be in that cases we have used the correlation study. Easier to collect to correlation data and the rational of your data, find your data is the rational or non-rational. We have used a correlation data when researcher want to be calculate easy way to calculate rational data. Definitely the researcher go for the correlation analysis. As you know that through SPSS you can be find out your correlations of the data. Here today you have already taking some examples of linear correlations and non-linear correlation, and positive correlations, negative and zero correlations. I hope you will all enjoy today lectures. Inshallah, next time we will be discuss our step 7 regarding to data analysis process. Stay blessed. Allah Hafiz.